behind the towering walls of castles and the quiet cloisters of forgotten villages. Women lived lives hidden in darkness, bound by silence, sacrifice, and unseen struggles that shaped the very fabric of the medieval world. Their stories, buried beneath centuries of neglect, reveal a fierce resilience and courage that history nearly erased but cannot forever conceal. The candle's trembling flame stretched long fingers of light across the cold, down with the weight of centuries. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, mingled with the faint, lingering musk of beeswax and brittle parchment, a testament to prayers whispered into the void and vows etched in quiet desperation. She knelt upon the rough floor, her hands trembling as they traced the faded embroidery of a veil worn thin by time and tears, each thread a fragile memory unraveling beneath her fingertips. Beyond the stained glass, fractured shards of light scattered across her bowed head, splintering color into shards of hope and loss, as fractured as the life she had been handed. The cold wool of her habit pressed against her skin, rough and unyielding. Outside, the hollow toll of a distant bell echoed through the chill night air, its mournful sound carrying the weight of forgotten prayers, of lives swallowed by silence and time. She was a daughter of noble blood, yet here, behind these walls, her name was forgotten, her voice swallowed by the rituals that bound her like iron chains. Days bled into nights beneath the same dim light, the rhythm marked by the soft rustle of habits, the distant murmur of chanting sisters, and the ceaseless echo of solitude. Her heart, a fragile flame flickering beneath layers of devotion, carried secrets too dangerous to share, stories of love stolen, choices forced, and freedom surrendered to the cold doctrine of a world that saw her only as silence. She had been given to this life long before she understood what it meant to live free. Her existence was woven into the fabric of duty, each moment a thread binding her closer to a fate she did not choose. The heavy wooden door, sealed by iron and resolve, shut out the warmth of sunlit fields and laughter that once filled the halls of her childhood, that caught the light like fractured souls, and altars where candles burned low, shadows mingling with smoke and silence. Here, devotion was both sanctuary and prison, a paradox carried in the quiet footsteps of women who had been forgotten by history yet bore the weight of worlds within their hearts. Each breath she drew was heavy with the scent of incense and stone, a reminder that even in darkness, tracing patterns once vibrant, now dulled by neglect and time. The fabric whispered stories of girlhood lost, of laughter silenced beneath layers of wool and prayer. In these moments, her thoughts drifted to the life that might have been fields golden with wheat, the warmth of sun on her skin, the sound of a mother's voice weaving tales by firelight. But such dreams were shadows, unreachable beyond these cold walls, where hope was a fragile bird trapped beneath iron bars. Yet even in the depths of this cloistered exile, her spirit refused to break. Beneath the heavy weight of ritual and sacrifice, a quiet rebellion flickered like the candle's flame, fragile but unyielding. Beyond chains of silence, her prayer was not just for salvation, but for remembrance, for a world to see the lives hidden in shadow, and to hear the whispers of those who had been silenced. The rusted iron of the cloister gate groaned faintly. With the passing wind, a sound like a whispered lament for those trapped behind it. Seasons turned slowly beyond the walls, their passage marked by the faint bloom of a single flower breaking through the stone cracks, a quiet symbol of endurance and hope. Her life unfolded in these shadowed spaces, a tapestry woven from threads of despair and courage, silence and longing. It was a story written not in grand halls or battlefields, but in the stillness of nights spent alone with prayer, in the soft fall of tears on worn fabric, in the breath held between fear and faith as the candle guttered low, casting its last fragile light across the worn veil. The world beyond these walls moved on, its voices loud and unyielding, but here, in this narrow chamber, time folded inward like the petals of a closed flower holding secrets, holding sorrow, holding a fierce, hidden life that refused to be forgotten. And in that fragile flame, in that quiet tear, the sharp scent of cold stone and burning tallow filled the cramped room, curling in the thin beams of fading light that crept through the narrow window. Outside, the ashen sky darkened slowly over the village, a thick mist weaving between timbered houses and tangled lanes, swallowing the day's last warmth beneath a heavy blanket of gray. Above, the rough-hewn wooden beams groaned softly, a deep, weary sigh that spoke of centuries of whispered secrets and forgotten sorrows. She sat alone, her hands hardened and worn by ceaseless labor, cradling a small loaf of bread. The crust was cracked and dry, a humble remnant stolen from the margins of survival. Yet it was all she had to quell the gnawing hunger within. Her youth was a currency long spent, traded not for love or choice, but for duty and power, fragile bond forged in the cold hearths of necessity. Bound by vows unspoken, she had been wed like an object in a cruel marketplace, a pawn in a game dictated by bloodlines and ambition. The air inside this room was thick with the weight of expectation, the fabric of daily life woven tight with endless chores, the rough texture of linens to be washed, and the relentless hum of spinning wheels. Each thread of routine tightened the invisible chains around her, pulling her deeper into a life shaped not by desire but by sacrifice. Outside, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer echoed like a heartbeat, steady, relentless, and unyielding, harsh reminder of a world shaped by violence and power, far beyond the fragile walls of her confinement. Her gaze clung to the twisting path that led to the market square, where the raucous calls of merchants rose and fell like waves, mingling with the scent of roasting meats and sweet spices drifting faintly through the shuttered window. It was a cruel temptation, a promise of freedom just beyond reach, a life bursting with color and sound that mocked the quiet gray of her existence. Within her chest, hope and resignation waged a silent battle. The flicker of a lone candle cast dancing shadows on the rough walls, its fragile light a beacon against the encroaching darkness of night and circumstance. She breathed in the scent of smoke and earth, the world outside pulsing with life and movement, while she remained trapped in stillness, her story untold and unseen. No stone bore her name, no song sang her plight, yet her heart beat with a quiet desperation, a steady rhythm of endurance, sacrifice, and unbroken will. Her hands rested upon the cracked loaf, fingers tracing the rough surface as memories stirred beneath the surface. She remembered fields bathed in sunlight, The laughter of children carried on warm breezes, the taste of fresh bread still soft and sweet. Those moments belonged to another life, slipping further away with each passing day, swallowed by the harsh demands of survival and the cold gaze of a world indifferent to her suffering. Her body bore the marks of endless toil, the calluses on her palms, the ache in her shoulders, but her spirit held firm, a flickering flame beneath the weight of unyielding chains. Around her, the village pulsed with quiet stories of hardship and hope. Faces passed through market squares and churchyards, each carrying burdens unseen yet deeply felt. The rhythmic pounding of wood against iron, the steady drone of prayer, and the murmur of whispered secrets formed a backdrop to lives shaped by hunger and fear, loyalty and betrayal. She was part of this tapestry, woven into the fabric of a community that demanded much and gave little in return. Night deepened beyond the window pane, stars obscured by thickening clouds, and the candle's flame danced low, shadows lengthening like ghosts across the walls. She closed her eyes briefly, surrendering to the faint echo of dreams. She dared not speak aloud a wish for freedom, for love, for a life unbound by the invisible threads of obligation. The cold wooden floor pressed beneath her knees, a harsh reminder of the stark reality she could not escape. Yet somewhere within a spark persisted. It was a spark born from the quiet rebellion of countless women like her, voices swallowed by time, lives hidden beneath layers of silence and sacrifice. Their stories did not blaze like those of kings and warriors. Instead, they whispered through the ages in the spaces between prayers and chores, in the soft fall of a mother's lullaby, in the fleeting touch of a stolen moment. She carried this legacy in her bones, a fierce resolve to survive, to endure, to hold on even when hope seemed a distant star. The village settled into a hushed slumber, its heartbeat slowing beneath the weight of darkness and dreams. Outside, the wind stirred the branches of ancient trees, their shadows stretching long and silent across the cobblestones, as if reaching toward the secrets held within every shuttered window. Her story was woven into this night, a quiet thread in the vast tapestry of lives lived in the margins unseen, yet unforgotten, silent but unbroken. As the candle flickered its final breath and darkness crept steadily inward, she opened her eyes. Once more, the path ahead remained uncertain, the chains of duty unyielding, but in the fragile light of that moment, she found a sliver of something precious, a quiet hope that whispered of endurance and a future yet unwritten. And in the stillness, as the village breathed beneath a cloak of mist, she was not alone. A veil of twilight seeps through the latticed window, casting the chamber in muted blues and grays that stretch like shadows across worn stone and weathered wood. The air trembles with the faint crackle of a dying hearth fire, its orange glow flickering against the rough-hewn beams above. From beyond the walls, the distant bleating of sheep drifts through the chill evening air, tethered to the steady heartbeat of a life ruled by the earth's cruel rhythms. Within this humble room, a woman bends over a cradle carved from ancient oak, her hands rough and blistered from seasons of unforgiving labor. The coarse wool that swaddles her child scratches at her skin, as real and unyielding as the soil that stains her cracked fingertips. The scent of damp hay and cold earth clings to the air, thick with the breath of the fields she must return to before dawn's first light, her feet calloused and worn through countless miles of trudging muddy paths and uneven ground, press firmly against the dirt floor. Each step is a silent promise, a tether to a world where survival demands sacrifice measured in sweat and sorrow. Her gaze, deep and unflinching, holds a fierce resolve that rises from the marrow of endurance, a quiet rebellion against the relentless weight of her existence. She is a peasant, born beneath the heavy yoke of birthright and law, shackled to the land as surely as the roots that clutch the village's withered soil. The wooden cradle creaks softly in the stillness as the child stirs our fragile pulse of life, a whisper of hope amid the grinding silence of hardship. Outside, the gnarled branches of ancient trees claw at the darkening sky, their twisted shadows dancing like ghosts across the thatched roofs of a village barely holding on. The wind moans through the cracks and crevices, carrying with it the faintest echo of prayers long forgotten, prayers to saints whose names have been swallowed by time and neglect. The woman's lips move in a trembling murmur, a prayer uttered with a voice both frail and unyielding, a thread of faith woven through the relentless fabric of suffering. Her story is etched into the textures of the world around her, in the cold bite of morning frost on soil cracked by drought, in the heavy weight of a basket filled with root vegetables and bruised apples, in the ache that settles deep in her back as she rises before the sun. It is a story told not in grand tales of kings or battles, but in the small mercies of dawn light spilling over a frost-covered field, in the bitter taste of sacrifice savored with silent dignity. She is a shadow beneath the bright banners of kingdoms, an invisible hand that turns the wheels of history without ever stepping into its light dot in the chill of night. As embers sputter and die, she rocks her child with a tenderness forged in hardship. Her breath comes steady, measured, a slow cadence that mirrors the heartbeat of the land itself. Around her, the village sleeps beneath a sky swollen with stars, the quiet hum of insects and the rustle of dry leaves, the only witnesses to her vigil. The horizon is a promise and a threatened other day of labor, another test of endurance beneath a sun that knows no mercy. She is bound by chains, invisible yet unbreakable chains of duty, of law, of poverty. Yet within these chains lies an unspoken strength, a fierce flame that refuses to be extinguished. Her hands may be scarred, her back bent, but her spirit carries the weight of generations. She is the earth's quiet guardian, the unseen mother of nations, yet unnamed in the annals of glory. Through the long nights and endless days, she carries more than her child. She carries hope, hope that one day the bitter harvest of toil will give way to a softer dawn, hope that her whispered prayers will reach ears beyond the gnarled trees and silent hills, hope that even in a world carved from struggle and loss, life will find a way to bloom again as the first pale light of morning creeps over the horizon, spilling like molten silver across the fields. She lifts her child from the cradle. The wool falls away, revealing small fingers curled tight, a fragile promise in a harsh world. She breathes in the cold air, tasting the sharp tang of earth and rain and dawn. The village stirs, the low murmur of voices, the clatter of wooden shoes on stone, the distant call of a rooster signaling the relentless return of another day. Her eyes trace the paths she must walk once more, through muddy fields and tangled brambles, beneath skies that shift from bleak gray to fierce sun. The land will demand everything again: her strength, her spirit, her silent courage. Yet in this moment, holding her child close, she is the pulse of life itself, unyielding, unbroken, and defiantly alive. Outside, the ancient trees sway in the morning breeze, their shadows retreating as light spills over the village like a blessing and a warning. The land remembers her, the mother, the laborer, the quiet flame in the cold dark. Her story is not carved in stone or sung in halls of kings, but in the relentless rhythm of earth and flesh and hope. And as she steps beyond the door into the waking world, the whispers of the past linger in the chill air, the silent strength of those bound to the land, the women whose hands built kingdoms and bore the weight of empires, yet remain hidden beneath the soil's eternal embrace. Her journey begins anew. The heavy wooden door groans on its iron hinges as it closes behind her, swallowing the last flicker of light and laughter in a suffocating silence. A chill, born of stone and shadow, presses against her thin linen cloak, cold and unyielding, like the life she has been drawn into. The scent of mold and dust clings to every surface, weaving itself into the air like a shroud that refuses to lift. Her footsteps fall hesitant and soft, swallowed by the vast corridors of the abbey, endless walls of gray stone, stretching beyond sight, each corner swallowed in dusk. Only the steady echo of her breath breaks the stillness, a fragile rhythm in a world built on silence. Somewhere far away, the low murmur of chanting sisters threads through the stone like a distant river, a steady current of voices bound by vows as ancient and unbroken as the walls themselves. Her hands clutch the rough twine of her rosary, worn smooth by years of trembling fingers. Each bead is a weight, a promise forged long ago in the crucible of youth and loss, binding her tighter than chains ever could. Outside the iron gates, a world once known flickers like a half-remembered dream, fields heavy with golden wheat, the chorus of kin calling across open air, the sweet sharpness of fresh bread torn from hearth fire. That world has slipped beyond reach, swallowed by the unyielding stone and cold faith of this cloistered existence. The scent of incense hangs thick, a dense veil that mingles with the rustle of threadbare habits and the soft flicker of candlelight. Trembling shadows that dance like ghosts on cracked walls. Her heart carries a quiet rebellion, a yearning buried deep beneath layers of sacred duty. It is a flicker, fragile and defiant, buried beneath the silence, beneath the solemnity that demands obedience above all else. A whispered question: what if there were another way? What if the world beyond these walls held more than cold prayers and endless waiting? Her footsteps fade slowly into the gathering shadows, swallowed by the vast emptiness of stone corridors where time itself seems to slow. Each echo is a whispered echo of lives lost, of dreams folded away like fragile parchment hidden beneath centuries of silence. In this cloistered world, her existence is a fragile thread stretched thin across the abyss, between the sacred and the forgotten, between hope and surrender. The weight of her vows is a heavy shroud pressing down upon her shoulders, binding her spirit in invisible chains. Yet, beneath the austere quiet, beneath the ritual and routine, there is a pulse, faint, yet steady, a reminder that even in confinement, the human heart can reach for freedom. The cold stone presses close, but it cannot extinguish the ember of longing that burns beneath her skin. Through narrow windows streaked with dust, pale light filters in, casting slivers of gold and shadow across the worn floor. Outside, the world turns, indifferent to the quiet sacrifices made within these walls. The seasons pass unseen, the fields ripening and withering, the wind carrying voices of a life she once touched but can no longer grasp. In the stillness, she clings to fragments, a stolen memory of sunlight on her face, the laughter of a brother, the scent of wildflowers carried on a summer breeze. These ghosts nourish her spirit, fragile roots reaching beneath stone and sorrow, searching for something beyond the cold confines of prayer. The sisters move like shadows through the corridors, their voices rising and falling in endless chant, a symphony of surrender and devotion. Each step she takes is measured, deliberate, a dance of discipline that hides the turmoil beneath. Her silence is not peace, but a battlefield, where dreams clash with duty, where hope wrestles with despair. In the quiet hours before dawn, a single candle guttering in a darkened chapel casts trembling light on worn faces and bowed heads. Her breath catches, a silent prayer slipping from lips stained with longing. The world she inhabits is both sanctuary and prison, a place where faith is both shield and shackle. Her fingers tighten around the rosary, each bead a cold reminder of the promise she cannot break, a vow to a life forsaken, to a path chosen for her by grief and circumstance. Yet, within that cold promise, beneath the surface of solemn obedience, her spirit stirs, restless and alive. The yearning is a whisper in the silence, a heartbeat beneath stone, a question that lingers long after the final chant fades. As night deepens, the abbey breathes a quiet hymn of shadows and light, of prayers said and prayers forgotten. The air thickens with incense and the weight of centuries, a tapestry of devotion woven through with threads of sacrifice and sorrow. Her story is carved in these stones, in the echo of footsteps long vanished, in the cold flicker of candlelight against endless darkness. She is one among many, a hidden voice lost beneath the clang of iron gates and the chant of sisters bound by fate. Yet within her lies a flicker of something timeless, a yearning that refuses to be silenced. The dawn will come again, pale and relentless, spilling light over cold stone and whispered prayers. The world beyond these walls waits, patient and indifferent, a place of freedom and fear intertwined. She steps deeper into the shadows, her heart heavy with secrets and dreams, her spirit poised on the fragile edge between surrender and hope. The iron gates stand between her and the life she once knew, between the silence she inhabits and the laughter she remembers. Yet the question lingers in the air. How long can a soul endure in the hush of stone and shadow before the quiet rebellion inside bursts free? The corridor stretches on, endless and dark, but within the stillness, a single thought rises, soft as a breath and fierce as a prayer. What lies beyond these walls may shape the fate of a life lived in silence, a journey yet to be told. In the dying light of dusk, a worn wooden spindle turns slowly between slender fingers, twisting threads of flax into thin, delicate yarn. The faint clatter of the spinning wheel fills the air, a steady rhythm woven into the fabric of evening labor. The scent of freshly baked rye drifts from a distant hearth, mingling with tendrils of smoke that curl and vanish into the cooling air, painting the twilight with warmth and the quiet hum of daily survival. She sits upon a rough bench outside a timbered cottage, its walls darkened by years of weather and toil, the wooden beams holding memories of countless dawns and dusks. Her eyes trace the horizon where fields bleed into sky, a boundary both distant and unreachable. Beyond that line lies a world she may never touch, a world of freedom and choice, while she remains tethered to the soil, to a life mapped by the ceaseless rhythms of work, born into servitude. Her days are marked by harvests and sowing, by tending flocks and mending worn clothes. Each task is a thread in the tapestry of her existence, coarse and unyielding as the fabric that brushes against her skirts. Her worn leather shoes press into the earth, proof of journeys made in silence and solitude, steps taken beneath a sun that offers little mercy. Yet beneath this surface of hardship, her heart carries something fragile, weight of stories whispered by her mother beneath a patchwork quilt, stories of far-off places and secret dreams. Nearby, a weathered oak stands sentinel, its gnarled branches stretched like ancient arms, guarding the village's hidden truths. The tree's rough bark is etched with the scars of time, a silent witness to generations who have lived and loved and suffered in its shadow. Its leaves shiver in the cool breeze, whispering secrets to the night that only the earth can understand. The deep toll of a village bell rises from the distant chapel, calling the faithful to evening prayers. Its sonorous voice cuts through the gathering shadows, a solemn reminder of the grip faith holds over fate and freedom alike. The bell's echo weaves through the fields and forests, threading together a community bound by belief, by duty, by the unspoken chains of expectation. Her gaze lingers on the darkening edges of the village, where light and shadow mingle in a fragile embrace. It is a world that sees her only as a silhouette ghost slipping between the cracks of history, a whisper of life hidden in the margins. Yet within her, a quiet longing stirs, a yearning for light in a world cast in shade. She dreams of a horizon unbound by walls or laws, a place where the threads of her life might weave a different pattern. The spindle turns in her hands, a small act of creation in a world shaped by limits. Each thread pulled from flax is a silent rebellion, a hope spun from the rawness of earth and sweat. The night air cools her skin, but the warmth of memory and desire burns beneath her ribs, steady and fierce. Around her, the village settles into the hush of evening. Fires flicker behind shuttered windows, casting dancing shadows on cobblestones, slick with dew. The smell of wood smoke curls upward, mingling with the scent of damp earth and ripe grain. Somewhere, a dog barks a sharp, lonely sound that fades quickly into silence. Her fingers move with practiced ease, the spindle spinning stories in its quiet whirl. Each revolution is a heartbeat, a rhythm that connects her to those who came before, women whose hands wove life from hardship, whose voices have been silenced by time. She carries their legacy in her bones, in the ache of her muscles. in the fierce determination that tightens her jaw. The sky deepens into a velvet black, stars flickering like distant promises beyond reach. The village bell tolls once more, its sound a soft lament against the vast silence. She breathes in the night, tasting the mingled scents of grain and smoke and hope. The threads in her hands grow longer, weaving a fragile bridge between what is and what might be. In the quiet, her thoughts drift beyond the walls of the cottage, beyond the fields that bind her. She imagines a dawn where the sun rises over open horizons, where the earth is soft beneath bare feet, and voices are free to sing. It is a dream spun from longing, delicate and yet unbreakable. The oak tree creaks in the wind, its branches reaching skyward as if to grasp the very stars. It stands as a silent guardian of stories untold, of lives lived in shadow and light. Beneath its boughs, she gathers strength, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, roots run deep and hold fast. Her eyes close briefly, the spindle stilling in her grasp. The world waits beyond the gathering dawn, a place where stories can unfold beyond silence and shadow. But for now, she is bound to this moment, to the turning of thread, to the fading light, to the delicate balance between hope and despair. As the first hints of dawn blush the eastern sky, she rises from the bench, the spindle tucked beneath her arm like a talisman. The village stirs awake, its breath held between night and day, between captivity and freedom. Her footsteps press softly into the earth, tracing the paths she must walk again, paths woven from labor, loss, and the quiet fire of dreams yet to be kindled. The horizon beckons, distant and unyielding. Her story is stitched into the fabric of this land, a thread among many, fragile yet enduring. And as the world awakens, the question lingers like morning mist: how long can the heart spin its thread before the pattern of life changes forever? The low moan of wind weaves through narrow alleys, tangled like a labyrinth of human struggle, carrying sharp scent smoke thick with soot, rotting refuse festering in dark corners, and the distant salt temps of the sea clinging to the air. Behind, a heavy oak door, swollen and scarred by years of weather. A woman presses a weathered hand against the cold stone wall, feeling the pulse of centuries beneath her fingertips. The stone hums with history, an unspoken witness to lives born and lost, two secrets whispered in shadow and silence. Her eyes, sharp yet worn by relentless hardship, hold stories forged in the crucible of plague, war, and betrayal, whispered like poison in hushed tones. Each glance carries the weight of survival, carved from chaos and sharpened by loss. The rough fabric of her cloak offers scant shelter from the chill creeping through the cracked timber walls, its coarse threads worn thin by time and toil. Candlelight flickers unevenly, casting shards of gold and shadows that dance across peeling plaster and warped beams. Outside, the raucous calls of street vendors falter and fade into uneasy silence, swallowed by the thick fog rolling in from the sea. She stands in the uneasy quiet, carrying the burdens of motherhood and loss as a cloak heavier than the one draped over her shoulders. Her breath, steady and measured, belies the ache hidden beneath ribs bruised by invisible wounds. The narrow streets beyond these walls exhale stale ale and damp straw, scents thick with despair and reluctant hope. Children play in the dirt with toys fashioned from scraps, twisted wood, and frayed cloth, laughter brittle, edged with hunger and desperation. Every creak of floorboards beneath her feet, every distant toll of a church bell resounds like a pulse, marking the fragile thread by which their existence hangs. The bell tolls for the living and the dead, for those lost to sickness and shadow, for lives extinguished quietly without witness or lament. The air is thick with the ghosts of the forgotten, shadows clinging like webs between stones and in the corners where light fears to tread. Her story is written not in grand halls or chronicles, but etched into the hidden corners of this world, into the cracked mortar, the worn cobblestones, and the whispered prayers that dissolve in the night air. It is a testament to the women who endured the invisible chains of medieval darkness, their lives a quiet rebellion against the relentless tide of oblivion. They bore burdens unseen, fought battles unrecorded, and carried hope flickering like a fragile flame against the encroaching gloom. She presses her hand harder against the stone, grounding herself in the solidity beneath trembling skin. The town breathes around her, a chaotic symphony of muted grief and stubborn survival. Smoke rises in thin spirals from crooked chimneys, mingling with the salt-heavy wind that pierces through cracks and crevices. Somewhere nearby, a dog whines softly, its voice a plaintive thread woven into the tapestry of night sounds. Memories press close faces, lost to fever's cruel hand, the hollow eyes of neighbors snatched away by invisible death. Each loss, a shadow stretching longer across the cobbled streets, lengthening with every passing dusk. Yet even amid this darkness, she holds fast to life, to the fragile pulse of those who cling to breath and each other. The walls close in with the weight of countless untold stories, but her spirit remains defiant. Beneath the surface of worn flesh and tired bones, a fierce ember glows, a whispered oath to endure, to protect, to resist the silence that threatens to swallow them whole. The ache in her chest is both wound and strength, a reminder that to survive is to fight against the erasure of memory and meaning. Outside, the wind carries the faint murmur of prayers, half-remembered verses lifted toward indifferent heavens. The night deepens, swallowing light and sound, but inside this fragile shelter, life pulses on in defiant rhythm. Her fingers clutch the rough fabric of her cloak, knuckles white with the grip of determination. She steps back from the stone eyes, scanning the darkened street where shadows gather like silent watchers. The world beyond these walls is harsh and unyielding, shaped by forces beyond her control: plague, war, hunger, betrayal. Yet it is also a world where small acts of courage bloom in secret places, where love is a shield against despair. The bell tolls once again, its mournful echo weaving through narrow streets and silent hearts. It is a call to remember, a summons to hold fast to what remains. The night is heavy with loss, but also with the promise of Donna, fragile hope nestled beneath layers of darkness. She moves toward the door, the chill biting at her exposed skin, but her steps are steady. Each movement is a silent rebellion, a refusal to fade into the shadows that press close. Her story is one among many, a thread in the tapestry of a world clinging to life against all odds. As the first pale light of morning bleeds over the rooftops, the town stirs, a slow awakening. Beneath skies heavy with mist, and uncertainty. Her gaze lifts to the horizon, where light and shadow dance in delicate balance. The question lingers, like a whispered prayer. How long can hope survive in a world weighed down by darkness? The streets hold their breath, waiting for the answer. Hidden in the turning of the day, in the quiet strength of those who refuse to be forgotten. The faint crackle of a dying fire spills amber light across worn wooden beams, flickering and stretching shadows like restless ghosts upon the rough-hewn walls of a humble peasant's hut. The air is heavy with the scent of wet earth soaked by recent rain, and the smoky tang of meat hung low to dry, mingling with the faint sweetness of wild herbs suspended from ceiling rafters, their leaves brittle with age. A woman crouches close to the flickering flame, her fingers weaving thin strips of leather into the crude shape of a basket. Each motion deliberate and steady, despite the ache knotting her joints like unseen chains. Beyond the fragile circle of firelight, the village murmurs softly as it settles into night, voices hushed and footsteps cautious. The restless howl of wolves cuts through the darkness, a stark reminder that the fragile safety of hearth and home is no shield against the lurking wild. Her eyes, framed by lines etched from weariness and determination, flick toward the narrow window where the first stars pierce the velvet blackness like distant lanterns beckoning in the cold. Life here is a relentless battle, a fragile dance between fear and hope, survival and sacrifice. The rough texture of her woolen cloak scratches against her skin, a constant, rough companion in a world where warmth is scarce and trust is even rarer. The hut breathes with quiet sounds, the sigh of shifting straw, the soft scrape of leather on wood, the steady rhythm of her breath mingling with the fire's dying crackle. Her fingers never falter, weaving life from strips of worn leather as the flames shrink and twist, shadows flickering like memories across the walls. Each loop and knot holds a silent prayer-an invocation for strength in the face of hunger, for safety from the wolves that prowl beyond sight, for endurance against the long, cold nights that stretch before her like an unyielding shroud. Outside, the night deepens and the wind carries the scent of damp soil and pine, whispering through the village with the voice of ancient forests. The distant howl breaks again, raw and aching, echoing like a lament from the wilderness. It is a song of hunger and survival, a mirror to the struggle etched into every scar on her hands, every hollow in her heart. Her eyes close for a moment, the firelight flickering in their depths as a quiet thought slips free, a memory of sun-warmed fields, of laughter caught on the breeze, of a time when the world seemed wider and less bound by fear. Yet those days are swallowed by the shadow of hardship, replaced by this endless twilight of uncertainty and guarded hope. She breathes in the cold night air that slips through cracks in the walls, tasting smoke and earth and the faint bitterness of loss. The basket grows beneath her hands, a vessel born from pain and resilience, much like herself. Each strip of leather, twisted and tied, is a thread in the fragile fabric of her existence, a quiet defiance against the harshness that seeks to unravel her. The fire sputters low, embers glowing like dying stars in the hearth, casting a final amber glow that softens the sharp edges of the room. Outside, the village falls silent, wrapped in a blanket of darkness that holds both promise and peril. The howl fades, swallowed by night, but its echo lingers in the chill air, a reminder that safety is never certain, that the shadows beyond are deep and waiting. She rises slowly, muscles stiff and bones weary, the weight of the day pressing heavy. Upon her, the basket is tucked beneath her arm, a fragile beacon against the encroaching dark. Her cloak wraps tighter around her shoulders, the coarse wool a thin armor against the cold breath of night. Through the small window, the stars continue their silent vigil, distant and cold, yet endlessly constant. The night stretches on, vast and unknowable, but within the humble walls of the hut, a stubborn flame endures. It is a light born of courage, hidden in plain sight, of lives lived in the margins and shadows, of women whose strength kindled the fragile dawns of a world forged in struggle. Her footsteps carry her toward the door, each step a silent vow whispered into the darkness, a promise to those she loves, to the unborn dawn, to the unbroken spirit that refuses to fade. The village sleeps beneath the watchful sky, fragile and frail but alive, held fast by the quiet hands that keep the fire burning through the longest nights. And as the first hints of morning blush the horizon with pale light, the question hangs. Like mist in the cool air, how many flames must burn unseen before the dark yields to day?